Well, my grandfather started McGrew Real Estate in 1951, and he passed away in 1953. My grandmother took over then and maintained the business till 1960. She really didn't have any business experience at that point. She was a home ec teacher. And in 1960, when my dad got out of KU Business School, he took over and was our CEO until a few years ago when I took over. And I was licensed in 1982, have been ever since. You know, growing up, I was pretty sure I didn't want anything to do with it. I'd seen my dad have to deal with all the egos in this business and all the troubles and everything, and so I was pretty sure I didn't want to do anything along the lines of real estate. And got halfway through KU and wasn't sure that I had anything better to do, and so Dad kind of did the old, well, why don't you get your license because you ought to know something about the business, and then, well, why don't you come to a sales meeting because it might be something you can pick up on. And next thing I knew, I was showing somebody and made a sale and was kind of hooked on it ever since. But I had always felt the historical tug. You know, I sit at my grandfather's desk in my father's office, and so it's I'm connected to all of that, absolutely. You know, it's a funny thing. When I kind of skipped the local part, was never a local president, had been involved with some committees and stuff, but hadn't done too much. I'm like a lot of folks in the beginning. I wasn't sure what the difference was between the Kansas Real Estate Commission and the Kansas Association of Realtors. I'm not sure I could have told you. But in the early 90s, there was a change in the way the state was set up, and our Lawrence and at that point Topeka and Wyandotte were going to get their own region, and someone thought I should apply for that, and I ultimately got that and got very involved at the state and have spent a lot of time. That was in 1992, I think, and have been very involved ever since, and really feel like I've gotten way more out of it than I've ever put into it. It's been a great experience. Well, it's kind of like the world's biggest Dale Carnegie course, for one thing. It's you know, it's certainly an honor, and you feel the responsibility when you're state president. But there's so many people pulling in the same direction. It's not a one-person game. It's a team effort. Always, at least I've always felt like it was. The folks that I've got to meet, both in staff in Topeka and all the folks from around the state, have been very. They've just all been a real blessing to me. And now, as I've been involved at the National Association, it's the same thing all over again. You know, we have 105 counties, and we have realtors in every one of them. We also have legislators in every one of them, and so even though we tend to think about it as Topeka, it's really not. It's the whole state, and having the grassroots kind of program that we enjoy is really helpful when it comes down to getting something done or keeping something from being done. Probably the most involved I was when Senate Bill 66 was out there, which was the ability to do controlled business, title business, allowing realtors to be involved in that. We've been prohibited from that since the late 80s, and that was one of those things just didn't seem right to me, and I was really involved in that initiative, as were a lot of other people, and ultimately we enjoyed mostly success on that issue, and that really got me involved in a new way, in a deeper way, and I have stayed involved ever since. Well, the state, you know, we have issues at the state. I guess the first one that comes to mind for me would be nationally would be the $8,000 tax credit that's currently in force. Last year it was $7,500 and it was repayable. Right now I'm on the Federal Tax Committee at the National Association, and so we've been very involved in that issue. We recognize right now that there's quite a few more first-time homebuyers in the marketplace, this being May of 2009, than there would typically be in May of a year. And we think a lot of that is due to the fact that there's that $8,000 tax credit out there. So that's a real good example of how a very helpful program was passed, and the realtors were right in the middle of trying to get that done. You know, in the beginning, I think for a lot of us, you do it out of a sense of obligation. You know, someone says, hey, you need to give $20 to this or $99 to this or whatever, and you kind of do it and you don't really know what it is. But ultimately, it comes down to someone that you respect asking you to participate at a higher level. And in my case, it was Larry Von Felt. He put a real push on to get some life members, what we now call Sterling Arm members, in the state of Kansas. There were very few of them, and he went to the association leadership. At that point, I was in the chairs, and he said, you know, how can you ask others to give if you're not giving? I mean, and you can't just give at the basic level. You need to give in a leadership way. And there were several of us that understood what he was saying, and it wasn't easy to do, but we did it. And so I think that personal connection with someone that you respect is a real important facet. Well, I did it a little bit differently. I didn't do GRI. I did CRB. That was I think I knew that I was at some point going to be involved in management, and so I went for the management side of things. Found those CRB classes to be tremendous, and then because I had a CRB, there was a kind of a fast track that I could get a CRS. I took some of the CCIM classes and powered all those folks. Those are tough classes. I think I took about 3 of those, and there's no question that I learned a lot from every one of those classes. More than that, there's a network that you become accustomed to. There are folks that you recognize as the best and the brightest in the industry because they're taking those classes too, and you get to know them. When it's a GRI class, you get to know them in the state. When it's a CRB or a CRS class, a lot of times you're knowing people from around the country. And some of those folks, in fact, I was just in Washington, D.C. last week, ran across a guy that I was in CRB class with. He even remembered where we took it. I just knew we'd taken one together. And that was 20 years ago. And he's now a real leader in the association. And so there's no doubt that getting those additional, and not just for the alphabet soup after your name, but for the things that you actually learn is very valuable. There's no question that the folks that have done more education over time will earn more in this business and will rise to higher levels. So. At the time that I got my CRB and I was starting to move into management, it was really critical for that. I had a degree in business, so I knew that side of it, but I didn't really understand the management side and the real estate management side of it. So it was really helpful when I got started in the late '80s, moving into the management business. I have certainly seen in our company the folks with the GRI, the CRS, the ABR. I've seen those folks really excel at a faster pace than folks that don't take the time to do those things. And it's always hard to find the time, and it's always hard to spend the money, but there's no doubt that you get dividends, and far more than what you invest. The single most important thing for a new realtor getting in this business, for me, well, there'd be a couple. And one would be get involved with your association. You're talking about working with your peers. This is a cooperative, competitive business. It's very unique. It is important. You can't do it by yourself. You just can't. You don't have the listings, and when you have the listings, you don't have the buyers. You need the other folks to feel good about you and know you and respect you and trust you. So being involved at your state and your local and even the national association is very important from that respect in terms of directly being able to do business, besides the fact that you learn so much more about your industry, which makes you more influential and more well respected by the customers and clients that you're working with. The other thing that I would say is get a system put together. It's very important for someone to get in this business and start prospecting and then continue to prospect. That we tend to see this business come in waves. We work really hard to get some deals, and then we spend a lot of time closing the deals, and next thing we know, the deals are closed and we don't have something else to do. So you need to have a system, and there are a lot of them out there. You need to find one that makes sense to you, and then you need to be able to stay with it on a dedicated, regular basis. And so it's important not to bite off more than you can chew, because interruptions do come up. People do have emergencies that you have to take care of, and you can't lose the fact that you need to be balanced for yourself and your family as well. So having a system that you know is always in place, that you're always working on, that will continue to feed you business over years is really important as well.